All right, welcome back everyone to the Collective Intelligence Block Party. We took a little break to get some food, which we're now going to eat. And in the meantime, Imre is kind enough to share with us something. So Imre's going to screen share whenever you're ready, Imre.
Do I mute or leave it open?
Ask Nolan, does he need to mute or just because he wants to play, you want to play something that has sound, right?
I don't think you need to mute, but
Okay, I'll leave it open.
After hitting screen share, make sure that you check the box in the lower left-hand corner that says share computer sound, and then I think you should be good.
Okey-doke.
Never really saw you coming until you turned me around. Used to think I wasn't fair until you turned me around.
Welcome to Nature Back Lab, the website, the blog, where we have the conversation that others are unwilling to participate in.
Wow, that's a powerful segment there, Imre. Anything you'd like to share with us about that?
Well, I enjoy making videos. I try to, you know, make them very easy to understand. I feel that, you know, oftentimes pictures say a lot more than words can, you know, and it's high impact, I guess. So.
Absolutely. And you know, seeing that segment is like a reminder of all that we've seen and heard over the years and has been out there for decades. And yet, down we go down the death spiral, which makes me stop and think, what is missing? What is missing? What are we not doing that we need to be doing? And one gigantic answer pops out that then gives birth to a whole bunch of other answers. The gigantic answer is collective superintelligence. We need to get smart. Not like the comedy movie, but actually, I mean, like really, really, really smart. Collective superintelligence is the way we get smart as a species. That's the really big answer. What are the answers that gives birth to? Solar radiation management, veganism, holistic land management, cleaning up the oceans, sequestering carbon, transforming our economy, transforming our politics, transforming our culture, transforming our entire set of living arrangements as the foundation for transforming our entire global economy. Those are my thoughts in a nutshell. I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts. Since no one is in the queue, and there's just a few of us here, for the moment, I'd like to invite people to just jump in and start sharing. And then if we get too many people wanting to share at once, then I'll go ahead and institute the queue, reinstitute the queue. So go ahead, go and unmute.
Well, you know, we need a collective conscience. You know, we have to get our consciousness together. You know, on the same level. That's very important. And then we could all get under and stand. We can get under and stand for something positive that could help all of us, you know, and help each other.
Totally. Go ahead, Melissa, please. Thank you.
Can you actually hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Emery, that was really amazing, your video. It was really upsetting. And what struck me about it was that the majority of images were all male voices. And I'm just going to remind us all that we need leadership of the divine feminine in order to raise a consciousness back to one of compassion. And the divine feminine runs through all of us. But I just keep asking, where are the women's voices in this movement? And I'm just going to end with that question.
Well, we have three wonderful women here, and I think this medium is part of the answer. And in fact, I would love to see this medium really managed by the divine feminine. And we've talked about this before. And we had a really interesting conversation earlier today about that. I think the opportunity here is to make this a medium, this collective superintelligence that we're pioneering here, make this a medium completely devoid of any form of domination, violence, and by the way, interrupting people is a form of violence. Dominating a conversation is a form of violence. Any form of domination is a form of violence. And so I think a key indicator for us is how active are the women in this medium. And if at any time women are not feeling either safe or able to express themselves or put down in any way, anything like that, we need to get right on top of that. So we really rely on you, the wonderful women here, Sylvie, Patricia, Melissa, and the divine feminine in me. Thank you for recognizing that it's in all of us. And in that spirit, I'm going to go on mute and go ahead, Patricia.
Well, I didn't watch the video. I'm sorry. I just needed to take a break myself to get some food, but I think it's wonderful, Emery, that you shared and that you're a videographer. It'd be great if you could, if you wanted to maybe think about a video of about what's happening here at this 24-hour block party in Radish, and how the connections are amazing between VW, the Vegan World 2026, Radish, Climate Healers, the Interfaith Vegan Coalition, which is headed up by women, Judy, Carmen, and Lisa Leventhal. And then we've got, of course, the great leaders, Will Tuttle and his wife. I'm forgetting her name. She's part of the Divine Feminine. But we have all these great people and so Will Tuttle really inspired a lot of us with the World Peace Diet, and he's connected to this whole network. And of course, he really focuses on the divine feminine. So I want to encourage you. It would be so wonderful if you felt inclined and inspired to work with it, to make something that even describes this amazing network, which I tried to make it in I found this kind of mind map thing, trying to kind of connect them all together. And I don't have a printer, but maybe I'll write it out and show. But and then as for the divine feminine, I do want to acknowledge you, Jamin, because your facilitator skills have increased exponentially this time. And there's a saying that Marshall Rosen, and I do want to hear from you, Emery, as if to see if you are willing, but I just wanted to also mention that in nonviolent communication, Marshall Rosenberg, who observed the model, he never takes credit for it. He just is, trying to observe something that is just in our nature, which is compassion. And he says, anything worth doing is worth doing poorly, which was opposite to what my dad would say. Anything worth doing is you got to be perfect before you do it. So I am grateful, Jamin, that you're willing to jump in with this, learn as we go, and we're learning exponentially. I have felt drawn to come, and hi, welcome back, Jim. Good to see your smile and your hat. I love your hat. and the divine feminine is that yes, in all that, it's in all of us, in the men and the women. So I just am so grateful to be here. And I did want to run away. I'll say publicly, I have been hurt a lot. I'm 65 years old. And I tell you what, I've been facilitating groups for 50 years. And I've been hurt a lot. And yet I keep jumping back in. And yet I also, sometimes the baggage of all the hurt from the past welling up for me. I've done a lot of healing about it, but I still, sometimes I just want to, no, I can't go through this again. But the beautiful thing is that we just keep talking about it. Jamin, I told Jamin privately, as long as we're willing to keep talking about the issues, I am willing to stay in the game. So thank you, Jamin. Thank you, Melissa.
Beautiful. Thank you, Patricia. Melissa, please. Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to address what Patricia is saying. Patricia, I think that a lot of us are feeling exactly the same way you are. Like, we've come through a lot of trauma. And I think women in particular and people of color have come through a lot of trauma. I'm not saying that we're all traumatized on this planet, because it is a planet of suffering. And what I'm living is that the trauma is really coming to the surface so we can look at it and address it. And I think the beautiful thing now is that we don't have to do that processing alone. And I think it's really awesome that, Jamin, you created this platform for people to come together and talk about many, many issues that we're all working on collectively and personally. Because if we cannot heal ourselves, how are we going to heal our planet? And we are the planet as well, and all the plants and animals are a family, and we need to heal ourselves and heal our relationship with the rest of the world. That's how I see it.
Beautiful, beautiful. Miles, you got your hand up, brother.
Hi, yeah. Thinking about the divine feminine and thinking about what was briefly stated in Emery's presentation. At one point, Guy McPherson says on his channel that he's been talking about what nobody else wants to talk about. And I'm thinking, what might differentiate, or what does differentiate? It does differentiate the Radish channel is that indeed it also has been willing to fairly committedly talk about what people don't want to talk about. And I would characterize that as we're willing to talk about the absurd. And absurd is actually a word that simply means not out of the ordinary or not normal, but nevertheless quite possibly very true. So there's a lot of absurd things. One of the things that I encountered, and I think I was actually one day broadcasting when we were on a hangout, I had been downtown, and there's a place downtown where I know I can plug in my iPad and I can get free internet. And there's these statues there that celebrate the day that women became officially persons in Canada. And that was in October of 1929. And it's like, that's absurd. In other words, officially, in law, women were not considered persons less than 100 years ago. That's just one example of how many absurdities there are in this paradigm that we're living in, that for some reason we don't want to talk about. The fact that the divine feminine is missing in so many cases. And I'll just sum up by saying one of the incidents that I have read about and pulled off the document called the Columbia Accident Investigation Board, because I was in transportation for many years. So transportation incidents fascinate me. But the Columbia Accident Investigation Board was about the Space Shuttle Columbia, which was destroyed on re-entry because when it took off, a chunk of foam broke off from from the external fuel tank. And when you read the accident investigation report, you can see where if the divine feminine was allowed into the room, they would have said, no, you cannot do that. Those are people on board. Because the divine feminine realizes the life as more powerfully than I do. And there's so many incidences where if there was a feminine voice in the room, it would have changed the course of the situation immensely. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Miles. Hey, Ermi's got his hand up. Ermi, by the way, do you know how to put up your hand electronically? Because then but take it away, Ermi. The mic is yours.
Yeah, I just pressed the icon for hand, raise hand.
Got it.
As far as the divine feminine goes, my 2 cents on it is that I sense in society these days, there's been a transformation largely to the direction of the feminine. And I guess my take on it is that, like males on the average these days have turned much more to the feminine side of things. And you could see that in identity, gender politics and whatnot. You know, they want to be recognized as being more feminine. So this is a direction that's been going on now for quite some time. And you have the two sides, the liberal and conservative side of that. And you know, it is a positive things. It's a positive thing in certain regards that, you know, men are striving to be more feminine, but it's been over sexualized on the conservative side. They see that as a always sexual and not you know, anything else. You know, so a little paranoia there. Anyway, you could take that. You can go with that a little bit if you want. That's it.
Got you. Thank you, Emery.
I just want to point out my two visitors today. Can you guys see them?
Yeah, we see the deer.
Yeah, two babies. Yoo-hoo.
Wow.
I'm feeding them.
Beautiful. Well, no one's in the queue. And so when we have this few people and nobody in the queue, I'm going to flip the switch to just open sharing. So please you don't need to wait to be called upon. Just go ahead and jump in.
I would just like to add about the divine feminine, just a quick thought that popped into my head right now. And it's like, we have nothing to lose, but everything to gain. I mean, I think, you know, women have been suppressed and over the course of time. And, you know, I think that, you know, there's been movements to help improve the situation, but, you know, we have a long way to go still. And so I'm all for it. I mean, I think that, you know, I would love to see a woman president in the United States. We should have had a woman president. She won the popular vote, but for whatever reason, you know, we have what we have in the White House currently. But so, you know, I think we have to honor, respect, and cherish, you know, the contributions that, you know, each sex brings to the game, you know, and we don't, there's none of us that have it all, you know, and I think together is where we have it all in community. And, you know, I think, you know, we rely heavily on each other, and we would do best to do a better job to bring it to a level where there is equality and a sense of equality. I think right now what I'm hearing in the conversation, we haven't quite yet come to that level of a sense of equality. And I don't have the answer for having to do it, but I think as long as we have the willingness, it should just kind of rise up to the surface.
Beautiful. Patricia, take it away. Patricia, there you go.
See, it's so weird when I look up there and it says mute, unmute. My brain just does not register what that means. I know, it's weird. Okay, so I would like to attempt to exemplify the divine feminine by doing a little bit of active listening, which is something I would like to see more of in our conversations, so that we can really demonstrate to each other that we're listening. And so that is something that I learned from Marshall Rosenberg 30 years ago. It's like I heard of active listening before that, And it was the weirdest thing. I mean, I was about 35 years old and I'd read active listening. I can't understand it. But somehow Marshall Rosenberg, the founder of Nonviolent Communication, got it through to me that it's simply reflecting back what you understand someone to say, and then to and be willing to make a mistake. Like, well, maybe I didn't quite hear you right. So the purpose is to at least two purposes, and that is to show the other person you're really listening, to make sure you heard them right. And I think it also adds kind of a pause, it's like breathing. Like somebody talks, somebody else. I mean, I'm not saying we're going to have a new law that every time someone talks, someone has to paraphrase. Yet I would encourage us to do this. So I'm trying to understand you, Emery. What I heard you say, what I understood you to say is that you think that the divine feminine has been more emphasized. Like men are celebrating their feminine side, and that is a good thing. It's a more acceptable thing. It's a socially acceptable thing. However, I think you also said that it's become a sexual thing, and I didn't quite understand that, but so that's why I would like to also clarify what I didn't understand. I think what you're saying is that, you know, people, when they say, yeah, I would like to hear more about that, and then I would like to reflect back what Jim said maybe, but I would really like to have clarification, Emery, if you don't mind.
What I meant to say was that the gender identity situation in today's world, where you know, men and women, they're questioning their gender. You know, they're wondering if they're a man or a woman. But it seems to me that there are more men these days that are turning to be more on the feminine side of things, of issues. And this change is being sexualized, over sexualized, and that's what's being promoted as being the case. So, you know, it's being, you know, people are giving their thumbs down and not being accepting of that feminine side of men, you know, because, you know, a lot of people are putting it into the sexual category, you know, meaning deviant and you know, maybe harmful to children, and you know, pedophilia and all these issues come to mind for most people. So, but on the other hand, it is a feminine side that is being expressed, you know, by men, and they're being put down for it, you know, by men more so, by conservatives most so, I feel. So that's my my take on it, and you can add to it.
I think what I'm understanding you to say, that, because I'm still not completely clear, is that maybe like men who sense that like gender is the gender thing of a man thinks he's really a woman, or a woman thinks she's really a man, and so that's a sexual thing when they want to change their sex and take hormones and have operations. And are you saying that you're thinking that that is not a healthy way to express sexuality, or to have? And you said you're also referring to children can be hurt. I didn't quite understand that. And of course, if at any time someone thinks this conversation's going on too long, I definitely want to hear from you.
I think males are expressing themselves more femininely these days, and that's acceptable. I'm okay with that. But a lot of people, they look at it from a sexual angle, other than being, well, I have a different attitude on issues and the way things are in the world, nurturing, perhaps, you know what I mean? Like more of a feminine point of view. I'm not saying that there aren't women who have strong, strong views, but I don't know. It's very complicated, right? I find that a lot of gender problems these days, and where is it all coming from? Where?
All right. Well, I just thank you for letting me just listen to you more deeply, and maybe I'd like, and Jim, I think I think that's good. I think we can draw that to a close. And Jim, if you don't mind, Emery, are you okay with that? All right. I feel happy because Emery and I had just a moment. I feel like it was like a divine moment where Emery was the first person, I think, coming back from the break, and I'm here to hold the space. And then I said, "Hey, Emery, are we all good? Are we good?" And he said, "Yes." And I just thought, wow, that's so great. Because Emery and I was sensing maybe Emery didn't like me or something before because of an interaction. And I got to check in, and, I realized that my goal is I don't want to feel separated from anybody. I just want to feel connected to every single person who's here. And so I'm doing my best to keep any incompletions, as I call them, to clear them up. So, Jim, I think what I heard you say, because it was a while back, but I'm going to see if I can remember, that you said you definitely feel like we could use more of the divine feminine, and we almost had a president. You'd like to see us have a woman president. We almost had one, but didn't, and that you are in agreement, and that's all I understood you to say. Did you want to? Was that accurate? I mean, that's all I remembered because it was so.
Oh, yeah, Patricia, I think that sums it up. I mean, I think it goes deeper than just desiring a woman president for me. I mean, I think it's trying to correct the wrong that has been done over time, and that's a process moving forward, I think, and it's a matter of respecting the gifts that women bring to the discussion and realize that we're only part of the solution, and the only way we can have a complete solution is if we have everybody bring the gifts, because as a man, I see the world through a man's eyes, you know what I mean? And I can't see the world through a woman's eyes. So we need women to help us see clearly. You know, that's my take on it.
Hmm.
And I think, and if I could just add one thing, I think where we men fall short is that we tend to fall into the problem solving mode of communication rather than the listening mode of communication. And sometimes I think we would do, I know that in my lifetime that hasn't, that has not served me well at all. And I need to learn to be a better listener, and not that problem solving isn't important, mind you, but I think listening is equally important. So that's what I'd like to add.
Patricia, you're on mute.
I need to get to a little phone call, but I just want to thank both of you, Emery and Jim. My heart is warmed. I do feel the divine feminine is present in this moment, and I just feel really grateful to all of you, and I'll be back soon.
Thank you, Patricia. And speaking of the divine feminine, I want to welcome Madhuri, who has joined us, and welcome back, Myra. Divine feminine in the house. All right. Well, we're just having an open discussion until we've got one more hour of open discussion, which we can focus on abrupt climate change or collective intelligence or whatever we'd like to talk about. Open for suggestions, or we could make it a potpourri. And then in 1 hour at 2 o'clock Pacific time, we'll have Michael Gaio continuing the great conversation he started last Friday about Myra, about a news story for humanity and myth and etc. All right.
Can I just ask a question quickly? Sure. I broke away for an hour to go to the gym. I just got back. But anyway, did I miss the discussion on SRM? Did you have that discussion?
No. We talked about it just very briefly when you were here earlier, but we haven't gotten into that in earnest. And that was on the agenda earlier.
Okay.
But we, in fact, I'd love to talk SRM, but let's take the pulse and see what people are feeling. And Ermi raised his hand. Ermi, go ahead.
On SRM, I have a question. Have you heard of Project Bluebeam and this virtual laser projection? They're able to project images and all sorts of things onto surfaces. Now, what's involved in that is mirroring, and the process is on the nanoscale or some. There's a process involved in that which is quite complex, and it's extremely high tech and most likely very expensive. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
You said Bluebeam, BEAM?
Project Bluebeam, I think.
I haven't heard of it. I think Nolan's taking a peek now. See if we can find out about it. But I will comment that the SRM solutions that we've been exploring with Professor Guy McPherson and Dr. Yetow of Harvard are the most benign and potentially effective, as far as I'm concerned, as an engineer, as they involve installing very economically at scale massive arrays of mirrors to reflect sunlight back into space. And there have been a lot of different proposals around SRM, from spraying ocean water up into the atmosphere, to create clouds that reflect sunlight back into space, to spraying fine powder chalk up into the atmosphere, to doing cloud seeding. And by the way, other than perhaps creating low-level clouds from ocean water, which is a very natural kind of solution, I am totally opposed to spraying anything into the atmosphere. I mean, by default, I'm opposed. I'm willing to listen to any proposal and evaluate on its merits, but I think these mirrors that can be deployed and undeployed on the surface of the earth, whether on the oceans or on land, mirrors that are quite stable. I mean, the ones that Dr. Ye Tao of Harvard is proposing are floating glass mirrors, which would, be zero contamination. Glass is made of sand and it doesn't leach or anything like that. It's extremely stable. So anyway, I just wanted to stay where I'm coming from as regards SRM, solar radiation management. And we're in open conversation mode, so feel free to just jump in.
I just would like to add, I mentioned earlier that yesterday, after watching last week's presentation with Dr. Tao and Dr. McPherson, I always come away feeling tremendously hopeful. Like this is the most brilliant idea that I've heard to date, that I think has some legs that could possibly work. And that's kind of a reflection on the severity of the predicament. We're in a very severe predicament. And, having time to think after the presentation, I've spent a career working in healthcare, and that's dealing with people who have multiple medical comorbidities, in a multi-system organism. So I had to, for 37 years, think about impact of everything that I did. And so I had to calculate consequences, and I had to do a lot of that sort of thinking. And in the healthcare delivery system, we have an infrastructure that has been years in the making. And so the thought came to my mind, if the planet was a patient, what would that patient look like to me? And it occurred to me that our planet is like an 80-year-old patient coming into the office with an oxygen tube up its nose, and it's running a fever. So when an 82-year-old COPD patient on continuous oxygen would come to me running a fever, I would have an oh shit experience. This patient could turn anytime, and that may be the last decision he and I would have to make about how to move forward in his care and treatment. So that kind of a person, because he would be at risk of respiratory failure, I would probably call the ambulance and have the EMS people who have life support on the ambulance transport that patient to the hospital. Once that patient arrived at the hospital, he would be assessed, and most likely he would be in a state of what's called hypercapnia. That's high CO2 in the bloodstream. So if you think of the blood like an organ system, like the ocean, or this is a high level of CO2. Well, that patient then would be put on a ventilator. Okay, that's how sick this patient would be treated, and then they would be moved up into the intensive care unit. And so when it occurred to me that that's the state of the planet, I think our planet is that sick. And sometimes I think in these conversations, we think if we just do this, that, or the other, the planet is going to turn back into a 25-year-old healthy being. I think even if we do this, that, and the other, we're going to have an old, sick 80-year-old planet that's been smoking for 270 years. You know, Camel non-filters. You know, this planet has been smoking, and you know, the CO2 levels in the atmosphere is similar to that type of patient. And hearing Dr. Tao's solution, and if I could just kind of use another medical analogy, you know, he's talking about putting a cooling blanket on the patient and helping the patient's respiratory acidosis by giving it some sodium bicarbonate. You know, that's what would be done in the intensive care unit. That's looking at just two things that are part of a severe multiple medical problem patient. You know, so I thought initially Dr. Tao's solution was brilliant, and I think it's part of it could be part of the hopeful solution, but I don't think we should think about it like it's the best thing since sliced bread. You know, in some ways it's Stone Age. It's not even to the level of where modern medical care delivery is at this stage of history. You know, he's talking about using sand, water, and sunlight, and that's Stone Age. You know what I mean? And I don't mean to be a downer. I'm just trying in my head to kind of equate what is being discussed as a solution to what I know is done in the healthcare delivery. You know what I mean? And if the planet is an organ system, like we are all a product of the planet ecosystem, you know, should we be bringing in people who have systems experience in how to deal with somebody in critical care? You know what I mean? And that's what Dr. Tao, I think, is attempting to do, you know, deal with the planet that is in critical care. You know, he's not going to focus on the CO2 levels right now. He's going to focus on the fact that the patient has a fever. You know, the patient is burning up right now, which I think is the best place to start, because even people who have COPD can live a long time with high levels of CO2 in their bloodstream. You know, that's not what's going to kill them, but the thing that's going to kill them is probably that they're sick with a fever and on a ventilator in the hospital. So that was the thought I had that moved me to try to contact Dr. McPherson. You know, and Dr. McPherson so graciously took my call yesterday, and we spoke about it for about a half hour, or an hour rather, and he pretty much was in alignment and agreement with the analogy. You know, so I think if we could kind of approach what we're talking about like if we were around our loved one lying in the ICU hospital bed on a ventilator right now, what would we think is important? You know, would we think that planting trees is the most important thing for bringing this person back to some sort of decent life? Would we start talking about feeding the guy vegan diet? Would we be discussing divine feminine at that point in time, at that critical point in that patient's life? So again, not that I don't think all those problems in the world that deserve solutions are not important, but prioritizing, I think, the thing that needs to be done, like what I think Dr. Ye Tao is doing, I give him tons of credit. I came away thinking very hopefully, but then I started getting practical and thinking, well, is this even going far enough? And I don't think we know the answers to those questions. So I'll put that out to the group for discussion, if you would, please.
Jim, I'd like to make a quick comment, and then Emery has his hand up, and also I want to welcome Hugo Sierra to the conversation. Welcome, Hugo. So comment about what you're saying, Jim. I could scarcely agree more. I sorry, I couldn't agree more. Sorry, I couldn't agree more. Sorry. And in that, to the point that, you know, as recently as a couple of months ago, I was of the mindset that, you know, we need to make our whole platform SRM, you know, first, followed by veganism, collective intelligence, etc. And certainly this block party will be SRM heavy, but I've also, since that time in the last couple of months, and we've had some deep conversations about it, I've come around to the belief that the block party should be really open to all topics, let the best and most urgent topics bubble up to the top, and the people who are most awake to those greatest urgencies can then follow those bubbles to the top and focus on that. But it's really up to everyone to focus on whatever they want to talk about. And because someone might come in here as a committed drawdowner who thinks it's all about drawdown, it's all about carbon, right? Which I think would, you know, fit in with what you were saying, is it's basically SRM and everything else, right? And SRM is the urgent thing. I've used the analogy that, you know, you've got a patient who just got severely burned and maybe his clothes are still on fire. Dump him in an ice bath, right? You know, his temperature is 115 degrees and he's almost dead. Dump him in an ice bath and then get to work on patching up his skin and broken bones and everything else. That's the analogy I've used. It is so crazy clear. And the fact that for humanity as a whole, the superpowers, the governments of the world, the United Nations, academia, et cetera, the fact that none of these institutions are putting this out there as front and center, that we need to do SRM, but we have some lone voices, Ye Tao, Guy McPherson, Jamin Shively, now you and a few others. This speaks to our collective stupidity. And it's a stupidity that I believe is driven by addiction. We're addicted to money, to hoarding, to ego, to social status, and to fitting in, to whatever the current Macarena dance is that everyone seems to be dancing, right? Anyway, wanted to make those comments. Imre has his hand up, followed by Patricia. Take it away, Imre.
Yeah, thanks, Jan. My comment again is on SRM and what Jim was talking about. My issue is, do we have the time? How much time we got? You know, it seems like we're on the precipice here, you know, and we're going to need really, really advanced technology for this cooling and, you know, the control. How do you control these systems that we put into place to try to cool things down? Now, you know, there seems to be effects also which are on the biological scale, which you know, impact diseases, viruses. I mean, numerous things which could run rampant and you know, impact life. Now, that's one of the concerns I have. And you know, I was talking about the SRM, like the mirroring idea. There has to be better. There has to be a better solution, and it seems to me that there's technology available. It's a plasma. It's a plasma type of. It involves plasma. You know, it's a deposition process, plasma deposition process, which, you know, could be done on different kinds of surfaces, different widths and weights and stuff. I'm going to put a link in the chat. There's a company, high-tech company, that's really involved in that. And maybe a multitude of people or other people can look into the matter also and see what could be possible. Because I mean, these people, they're very narrow in their efforts, right? They're into a certain direction, and they're not thinking multi-level uses for what their technology could provide for.
Oh, absolutely. All the more reason for collective intelligence so that we can get out of the silos and into the holistic. All right. Patricia has her hand raised, and then I'd like to make a comment after Patricia. Go ahead, Patricia. Don't forget to unmute.
All righty. I remember hearing Dr. Rao talk about a similar analogy, except for he talked about an actual person in terms of somebody who's sick. And he did, I don't know if any of you watched that video. He had 7 videos, how not to go extinct, 7 webinars. And he gave the analogy of a person who was really sick, and he changed his diet to a vegan diet, and then he said the earth actually is he did use a similar analogy. I don't want to, and he said this person did this, and what do you do first? So he's thinking along the same lines as he's comparing a patient to the earth. I just wanted you to know, Jim, I will find, I don't know which one of them it is, but I want you to know you're in good company. And I think the beautiful thing about what is happening is that like in Vegan World 2026, we're working on those 7 core shifts. And so we are working on things that are alleviating the problem. SRM might be an emergency thing. Somebody else might come in and say, this is even better. But I think what you're saying is, what I like about what you're doing, Jamin, is like saying, yeah, if there's a better solution, tell us. And maybe somebody's going to jump in, like this guy who came earlier, who spoke very first, Ed, I think his name is, and he had I don't know, I couldn't understand what he was talking about, but I think he made, we're going to connect with him, sound like a brand new solution. So I think that as long as, as long as people are willing to go with their passion, like my passion is helping to create healthy community as we create to help healthy, now I'm calling it collective emotional intelligence. I mean, it's a real thing. I looked it up. So that's important for me to focus on that. And if somebody else thinks their passion is important, they need to work on it, but not force it. Not say, come on, everybody, we've got to work on this solution because it's the only thing, it's the most important. And yet, at the same time, we can say, this is why I think it's the most important thing. And somebody might change their mind and change their priorities. So I definitely, now that I understand SRM, I'm really wanting to support that more. Collective intelligence, I'm more behind that. So thank you for listening.
Absolutely. So I've got some comments, and I see Jim's got his hand raised. And you're kind of making my point. And in fact, here's another aspect to my point about, let's open it up to all topics. A lot of the people here have come from the vegan world, where they're beating a drum, veganism, and then they get exposed to SRM and they say, oh my goodness, that's super urgent also, right? So anyway, now speaking of SRM, I just want to read through a list of, at last count, 18 topics that I believe each of these needs to be mastered en route to getting planetary scale SRM to be a fully implemented reality. We need to do analysis of all the alternatives to SRM so that we can show side-by-side comparisons and say, look, the only thing that's going to work is SRM. I'll just give a quick example. Drawdown. Guy McPherson pointed out some research a few weeks ago that if we were to reduce 20% of the particulates emitted into the atmosphere from the dirtiest emissions, that would reduce the global dimming effect, and we'd see approximately a 1 degree centigrade spike in global average temperature in days to weeks. So drawdown would actually be counterproductive, right? Similar to, let's again, back to the hypothetical burn victim. They come into the hospital, their temperature is 115 degrees and their clothes are on fire, to say, oh, well, let's give them new clothes. Well, those new clothes would catch fire and it would only make things worse. No, ice bath first, and then we'll figure out the rest. So that's first, analysis of alternatives so we can do side-by-side comparisons. Second is the design of the mirrors and the design of the arrays. Duh, we got to design this stuff. Third, holistic computer modeling, modeling the entire planet and where to place the mirrors so that we can model out the impacts, which are going to be substantial, very substantial. We got to do it right. Fourth, implementation plan, execution plan. Fifth, PR, mass media, traditional media. 6, social media. 7, alternative media. 8, politics. 9, geopolitics. 10, finance. 11, philanthropists and foundations as sources of finance. 12, governments as sources of both political support and finance and infrastructure, etc. 13, private sector support from the insurance industry that's about to go belly up with all the catastrophes, the banking industry, the glass industry, power generation sector, water, tech, agriculture, coastal, all the sectors of the economy that are about to be and are becoming profoundly impacted by the climate crisis. Another is the religious sector. We need to get the religious leaders beating the drum, and because they've got tremendous sway over the faithful. Pope Francis is a great case study in that, in his book Laudato Si, his encyclical. Number 15, culture and story. We need for human culture to support this, not to be skeptical of it, but be skeptical at first, fine, but ultimately it needs to come around. So what is the new story for humanity that's going to support this? 16, arts and media. 17, humor. 18, partnerships. So imagine that we had 18 different teams working on these 18 different topic areas. That's part of the vision of collective superintelligence, is that we can organize ourselves, divide and conquer, get down into the weeds, but then also be able to roll it all up into an overall holistic integrated plan that we can then sell to governments and give them something that they can say yes to. Rubber stamp, sign, fund, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, just wanted to give that overview of the depth, the complexity, the richness of this topic. And that's just an initial list. And that's just for mirror-based SRM. Look bigger, and there's so many other urgent problems that need to be solved in parallel, simultaneously, and holistically. And that's what I love about a lot of Dr. Tao's presentation from a week ago, is that he looks at it holistically and says, hey, we can also use these to grow food and accomplish this and accomplish that and deacidify the ocean, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, thanks for listening. And over to you, Jim.
Thank you so much for that thoughtful list of process items. I'm not a very good process person. I wear a hat because my mind reflects my hat. But anyway, I just wanted to, I can't compare to what you just said, but I just wanted to finish my analogy. And the part that frustrates me the most is what you just mentioned, was the global dimming effect. And it's like if my sick patient on the ventilator got out of the hospital and told me he's on oxygen, I want to quit smoking the 4 packs of Camels right now. I would have to say, no, you can't. You can't quit smoking those Camels, because if you do, the world's going to heat up 1.2 more degrees C in 3 weeks. You know what I mean? So that's what frustrates the hell out of me, is that we're caught in this paradox. And I believe governments know this, you know, because everything that especially our Environmental Protection Agency is promoting, you know, continuing to burn dirty coal, is so counterintuitive to where we're at in the stage of decline, to where I think they understand that the responsible thing to do is to keep burning fossil fuels, because if we don't, we're screwed. I don't think they'll come out and say that, because I don't think they want to panic everyone. But as much as I don't want to give President Trump credit for knowing that, what he's saying makes so little sense, you know, so much little common sense. I have to believe that the presidents have probably known this going back to Jimmy Carter when we had the oil crisis. I believe at that point it became apparent to our leaders, world leaders, that we don't have a choice to stop burning this stuff. You know, and I think at the point where, you know, in 1750 we started burning coal into the atmosphere, we didn't know what the consequences of that was going to be. And then once we caught up to that and understanding the consequence, I think at that point we knew we didn't have any route of return yet until we can sequester it out of the atmosphere. And I think, and cool the planet first, like Dr. Tao said. So those were the two comments I wanted to make. Thank you for letting me make.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Patricia.
Yeah, and I really appreciated what you said, Jamin, about those different areas that need to be addressed. And I just want to tell you, Jim, and everybody who's listening, that I had the honor of staying on all night at the block party when there weren't, and I knew that the advantage of doing that was I would get to hang out with these guys without too much interruption. And my former husband, who's my very good friend, I have two former husbands, they're both dear friends. And so my former husband, living up in the house above this apartment, he said, "Oh, it's like you're having a sleepover." And so during our sleepover, all of a sudden, Jamin, like near the end of it, like maybe the last 20 hour, like on the 20th hour, he just came up with these ways of tackling this problem to take the SRM. And probably in the wee hours of the morning, or who knows when, maybe we'll schedule it. It's like brainstorming how to implement how to get that organized. We're talking about having a base camp, that project management system. I think it's going to happen. I'm willing to oversee it, even though I was scared, like me oversee base camp. But hey, I love base camp. They created Ruby on Rails with Basecamp. I don't know if you knew that.
You mean they created Basecamp using Ruby on Rails?
No.
Oh, in other words, they developed the system, the language Ruby on Rails using. Interesting. That I didn't know.
Yes. When I get into things, like when I heard about Basecamp, I decided I'm going to go deep. I want to know about Basecamp project management, and I just loved everything about it. Yeah. So we can do this. In fact, I think what I'll do is I'll contact the guy who founded it. He says, "Oh, just contact me here," and I'm just going to contact him and say, "How did you do it? You know, we're trying to do something that big also. So can you give us some advice?" Because the co-founders they're on the same page as we are. I know they are. And so I just want to celebrate that even though some people think it's kind of crazy that we're just having conversations about such a wide variety of topics. It's working, Jamin. And this time it's going so much better because we really are raising our hands, taking turns. I'm privately messaging some people and saying, could you keep it a little shorter? People who trust me. So, it's like we're all working together using our skills. I really want to celebrate that. I'm glad you're here, Jim.
Could I just ask you a quick question? I've never heard the term Basecamp. Could you briefly describe what Basecamp means?
Sure. Basecamp is a project management system that makes it really easy to have a bunch of teams in one place. I look at it as kind of a co-working space. Are you familiar with co-working? It's a big, like in the Bay Area, it's really big, where you have a big building and there's little cubby holes and desks and a coffee shop and there's conference rooms, and you rent a space so that you can utilize that, all the great like the internet, and then there's other people to talk to, and if you need to meet with people, you can meet in the conference room. So it's kind of like, and then you can also collaborate. Most of these co-working spaces are to make a better world. And I just had that idea that Basecamp that we create is going to be for Radish, will be very similar to that. So for example, in the Vegan World 2026, they had an in-person conference, and to keep everybody going online, they're paying like $99 a month to kind of like rent an online site, a site to where, and for unlimited people can come, and we have teams, like for example, every one of those core shifts, we have a team that's working, and on each little team, we have like a campfire where people can just put out whatever they want, like, hey, this is what's happening, and oh, I'm feeling bad today, just want to let you guys know. So that's a campfire. There's a schedule, there's a message board, there's a place to hold documents, so there's 6 different sections. But then there's the overview where everybody can communicate through a ping, for example, like somebody can, so then the whole group, not everybody's a part of every group, so they're not overwhelmed. This is a part of keeping, how emails, you get so confused and you're trying to keep track of emails and people just opt out. This is a way of helping people to stay more in their track, but still connected to everybody who's working in the group. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks for that explanation. I just never lived in that world, so I apologize. I just am not familiar.
Oh, it's okay. Basecamp, it's really user friendly. So even if you're not a vegan, you're welcome to join Vegan World 2026. If you give me your email, I can add you and you can check it out.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd like to read something that Imre wrote, which it sounds to me like it's a criticism of this idea of SRM to cool the planet. Imre, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but here's Imre's quote. Bigger SRM, ... Geoengineering is already terminating tremendous amounts of life on Earth as we speak in ways we can't even articulate. And so I think what Imre's trying to say there is, hey, this big SRM idea, it may be a terrible idea. And this fear, and feel free to jump in, Imre, at any moment to clarify, but there is a fear of geoengineering generally. And I think that there is a tendency for humanity, because there are so many just terrible, horrifically bad geoengineering ideas. There's a lot of bad geoengineering ideas. And then also look up in the sky and look at the chemtrails. That's geoengineering, and that's horrific, right? So if there's all these bad stuff floating around in the bathwater, right, there's a tendency to throw out the whole bathwater, including the baby. Well, guess what? There is this beautiful golden baby called benevolent SRM that not only should not get thrown out with the bathwater, but we need it to save our lives because we are burning up. Look at Australia. Just look anywhere in the world. We're burning up and we're all about to die from overheating. So this benevolent SRM, it does nothing but cool us down. It doesn't contaminate. It doesn't kill. It doesn't maim. It doesn't harm in any way that I can see. And of course, you know, it'll have to be designed to conserve that intent. Imre's got his hand up. Take it away, Imre.
Well, take it away. Yeah, easier said than done. You know, the thing is, over the past years, I've listened to a lot of Dane Wigington and the way he goes on about geoengineering and those, you know, everybody called them chemtrails, okay, but it is geoengineering. I mean, they've admitted to that now, but people aren't catching on. You see, the general public is sandboxed away and never hear about the all of the facts, all of the things. You know, even Wigington himself, you know, he gets cut off, he gets muted all over the place. You know, so you know, we have no idea. Obviously, there are some things about it that are absolutely required. Yeah, we have to find technology and use it to do what we have to do to get things under control. But, you know, let's be clear. People are dying. Life is dying. It's an experiment. They don't know exactly what they're doing, what the overall effect is going to be. You know, it's complicated, for sure. And yes, your ways, which, you know, the recent ones there that McPherson was talking about last week, okay, with the mirrors. I tell you, I worked with glass for over 30 years. Glass, okay, it's you can talk about technology all you want. You want to put that in water. You want to put that into some system there that's on water. They're already doing it with what's the thing that they're doing there with the energy, okay, with the brain fart. Anyway, they're already doing some of that. So, you know, I don't see it. Apart from the link that I put in there, which could be promising with that plasma deposition process, that could be interesting because of the weight, you know, and maybe there could be something done there. Needs further investigation. That's all.
On that, we're in total agreement, Imre. We need further investigation and development across all these fronts so that we can finally put together what is the solution or what are the solutions and how do we stage them and how do we develop all the supporting pillars that are prerequisites. One thing is for sure that is very clear. We are overheating exponentially. Guy McPherson has identified at last count 67 self-reinforcing feedback loops, all of which are driving exponential overheating and not a single feedback loop cooling us down. So, you know, we got to do something and very, very fast. You asked how much time do we have? We may have until this summer. We may have longer, but we may only have until this summer. We don't know. It's like when Silas saw his garage on fire, he could have said, I don't think it's going to spread to the rest of the house for a couple of days. Look, let's not screw up our Saturday plans. Let's go to the beach. Let's go have dinner, and we'll come back at night and we'll see how it's going. Maybe the fire will put itself out. Maybe it was a cyclical thing. Maybe it just flared up no, he called the fire department immediately. Hose this thing down. We need to hose down our planet. We're overheating and we're dying of exposure, and it's about to get a lot worse. Jim, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say I agree with Emery that these are desperate measures, but I think they're desperate measures because we are in desperate times. And I don't know that I think there's some degree of dissonance that we all live with, that we look out the window and we don't see it knocking on our door yet. But I think the people who know realize, and I'm not including myself, I only know what I know based on what other people know better. But I do believe that time is running out, and even in human time, we don't have a lot of time. And I watched the interview with Dr. McPherson, and I wish I remembered the guy's name from Sweden, but they were saying, like, by the end of the year or the end of the summer, if we get hit with an El Nino and get a bunch of warming, that we're in big trouble if that happens right now, given the current state of things. So I don't know that we have time, and I think, like, I agree with Emery in a sense that we have like 20 seconds to fix this problem if you're looking at it in geological terms. We've run out of time, and we may have run out of time 50 years ago. I'm not sure about any of that. Who knows? I don't think anyone knows. But we have to operate like that's the case. I think we have to move forward quickly if we have any chance of affecting a positive outcome. And I'll leave it at that.
It's that simple. We've got to move extremely quickly if we want a chance. But if we don't do anything, for sure, we're going to be dead in a few years at the most. And it could be a pretty painful death with starvation, disease, war, violence, cannibalism. Wouldn't that be some interesting payback, cosmic payback? Anyway, we're going to take a break in about 4 minutes for about 10 minutes. And then at the top of the hour, we will have Michael Gaia with us to present on the topic of writing a new story for humanity. Some new topic this week that's related to last week's, but he's still been cooking it up. So I haven't even gone into the kitchen to bug him. He's just there cooking away, tasting the vegan soup and seeing where to go from there. Michael is vegan, by the way. Anyway, Patricia, you got your hand up. Go ahead, Patricia.
Well, I just think at this moment, it'd be great to hear from people about how the past, I don't know, have we been talking just 45 minutes since the last break?
No, it's been about an hour and a half since the last break.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I always like to do a little reflection, because part of the cycle of learning is to reflect on how we're doing. And it's not a demand, but what I'd like to share and invite other people to do is to just take a look at this last hour and a half, how it's been. And I would just start by saying that I just feel so happy that we're talking so calmly. People are really, I feel, treating each other with utmost respect. We're taking turns. Jamin's doing a great job of holding the space for all of us and making sure everybody gets heard. I just really am very much enjoying what is going on. And I really think that maybe even though we can't see something concrete, it's like the roots of the bamboo For 7 years, they go down, down, down. You don't even see the bamboo. And in the 8th year, something like that, it shoots up 80 feet. So we're setting the roots, the foundation. True story. Well, at least I read it on the internet, so it must be true.
If you read it on the internet, it must be true. All right. All righty. Well, let's take a break until the top of the hour when Michael Gaia will be here. Does somebody want to volunteer and hold the fort while we're... Oh, thank you so much, Patricia. Really appreciate that. Okay, so we'll stop recording for the next 10 minutes or so until we get started with Michael Gaio, but feel free to hang out. We're still live streaming. Even though we stopped recording, we're still live streaming.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. So feel free to just chatter it up, and we'll see you at the top of the hour. And thank you for Patricia for holding the fort. All right.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right. See you all in a few.
Okay.